Morning. Good to see you all. How's everybody doing? Got some eye rubbing. We're getting ourselves ready. Does anyone need chapter 10 that we're on? Here, pass this around. Take one for whoever needs.
What page are we on? Let's see. I've been trying to mark it.
Just make a necklace out of it. It's good. There you go.
Okay. Is that like osmosis?
Right. Put them in my pillow at night.
See, some of the leaders of this tradition actually said, although it's not what we recommend, there is an advantage to just owning a holy book, even without reading it. Of course, you're supposed to read it and learn from it, but there's a separate advantage just in buying and owning it. That there is some truth to that. See?
Made my day.
I got everybody's clothes.
Thank you. Here, pass this down, please. Let's pick up where we left off. Yeah, I labeled on YouTube, the class where we reviewed chapters 1 to 8. So for anybody who's joining us online or here that wants to kind of catch up, there's the one class, I think it's 17 or something it says. Okay, good. I labeled it Review Chapters 1 to 8. So we did all that. We have the structure of the soul. We've memorized it. We've inhabited it. And then chapter 9, we looked at what's going on inside us dynamically, that the divine soul is housed in the brain and right side of the heart, the animal soul on the left side. They're fighting it out, and they both want to use all three garments of expression of the body, thought, speech, and action, to express themselves. And it's all or nothing, right? So the aspect of me that is a true piece of godliness, it wants to be expressing all the time. It wants to just understand that all I am is an extension of godliness. There's no me. It wants to be lost in that and to help people around me. The animal soul, it believes I am the real being. It believes I exist, and so everything flows from that. It wants to take care of me, right? So they're fighting it out, and in the end we learned, we saw the whole vision of the divine soul, how it wants to not just express thought, speech, and action, but also strip away what it called the self-centered, perhaps, garments of the animal soul, and actually not just not allow it to express, but even a second level, banish it from the heart, so that I would just walk around all day and not need any discretion. I would not have any impulses that I'd have to say, whoa, okay, don't think about that, because I'd banished it. That's a second level. And then even a third level, convert it to good. So in the metaphor of the two rulers that are fighting, it wouldn't be the one ruler locking the other up so it can't express. That's the first level. It wouldn't even be the first ruler banishing the second ruler so couldn't even try to express, but actually be befriending it, making an ally, and then a close ally, so that now it could be let out of jail completely and it would actually be helping the first king. It'd be the first king's best ally, and now you've basically got two kings on the winning side. So those are three levels. And then we finally looked at the nature of the animal soul, that the animal soul wants the same thing, but if you recall that parable, at its core, the animal soul is still working for Ein Sof. The animal soul is there to test us, to strengthen us, to let us dig deeper, but it won't be happy winning in the end. It's most happy losing at its deepest. Then chapter 9, we started looking more closely, chapter 10, we started looking more closely at the detailed nature of its tzaddik. Right, so we said, if someone reaches that second level, where they actually banish and eradicate the animal soul and its drive from the left side of the heart, now they're called an incomplete tzaddik. Incomplete tzaddik, and a second term, a tzaddik who knows evil. And then the second level, if they don't just banish it from the heart, but if they actually convert it to good altogether, now they're called a complete tzaddik. So we've assigned three levels, and we know who those three personalities are. We have, first of all, anyone who allows the animal soul to express, even subtly in a thought. They're in the category of Rasha. That doesn't mean they're diabolical. It just means they have some self-centered expression that's going on. So they're normal, they're human. Then we have someone who has banished it. So now I can walk around, as we said, whatever temptation might occur to a normal person, this person is looking at it, it's like that microphone. It doesn't occur to me to argue with it or eat it or flirt with it or anything. It's a microphone. Why would I do that? That's when it's been banished from the left side of the heart. So now there's no need for discretion. I don't even perceive inside any counterproductive urges. And finally, there's the person for whom now we've converted it, and that's a complete tzaddik, right? And for that person, it's not just that this is neutral. It is, and here is always a fun conversation. It's not just that I walk by, see the microphone, and I say, why would I eat, flirt, or shout at a microphone? But actually, I'm walking by, and like we said, it's like somebody threw up on the ground. Ugh, I have a revulsion towards it, right? That person, the idea of doing anything out of a self-centered drive is just, they hate it. They hate it. Because their allegiance is with their divine soul. And they know, even though all I'm doing is just letting the animal soul express, not in a destructive way, I'm not hurting anybody, not breaking any laws, they're on the side of the divine soul. So why would they want to let the other king out of jail? Even if the king says, I won't do anything, I know. He said, no, this king said you stay in jail, right? I'm not letting you out of jail. I'd hate the idea of not following the law of the king that I have allegiance to. If I'm on the side of this king, I'm not going to take this king out of a jail and tour him around and say, okay, he promised he's not going to misbehave, right? No, I hate the idea. Even if he didn't misbehave, what would happen if the king found out? I'd open that door. I'd let it out. Oh my God, I hate the idea. So this is not a normal state of mind, right? This is something that most of us cannot, a level most of us don't have the capacity to achieve from this perspective. But that's why we talked about a tzaddik in some ways is measured not just by the amount of love they have for holiness, this ahava shebatanugim, this love of delights where they actually experience closeness to holiness, not just a yearning of being distant, but a closeness. But the corollary is, if they have true perfected love, then that hate is going to be there just as strong for something that opposes it. Even if it's just, I'm allowing what opposes it to express, not in a destructive way. Right? Why would I do that? I hate that. Yeah? And it's tricky, because we don't like the word hate. We don't think of it as a spiritual word. And you might say, yeah, my goal here is to love everything, to transcend the world, to become enlightened. And of course, enlightened people don't hate. And that gets a lot of good press, and it sounds really good. But if I look at how spirituality flows in life, I don't think it's true. I don't think it's true that hate is not a spiritual reality. I have a friend who works for a church, in fact, and he spent several months in Nepal doing a very dangerous job of making a movie about underage girls that are trafficked there across India, across the border, to just be abused in brothels, 20 clients a day for years and years and years, and then never heard of again. You can imagine. Right? And this guy, out of a sense of passion, went right to the border and was interviewing girls and interviewing girls that are now helping save other girls. Tens of thousands of these girls are crossing the border being sexually trafficked. I really don't mind saying, if you love decency, if you truly love decency and goodness, you hate that. You hate human trafficking. You hate that someone would coerce an underage girl to cross the border and then be forced into prostitution. Now, is that not a spiritual reality, right? If the degree to which you truly love decency, do you not hate that? I mean, we like to avoid it. We like to not think about it. But here they're saying, no. If you truly love one thing deeply, personally, then you do hate its opposite. If you truly love the environment, if you love the beauty of the earth that God created, then you hate just wanton destruction of it for selfish reasons, right? If you love your family, then you hate someone that announces they would kill your family or tries to kill your family. This is a healthy spiritual reality, right? So in Kabbalah, Chesed and Gevura, they're both important, and if you love something, then also you hate what opposes it, and that's not That's not a compromise. It's not like, well, I'm spiritual, but I'm going to hate this thing. No, that's part of being spiritual, right? So that's in fact how we measure the level of love of a tzaddik, is once they get to that point where they love godliness so much, right? For us, it's easy. I can say, yeah, I hate human trafficking. Give me a break. Of course, who doesn't? But here, they're getting to a subtle level where they say they love godliness. They love God. They love that sense of oneness so much that anything that opposes it, that creates another being who exists, it's revolting. They hate it, right? I can't relate to that. For me, I have to work, sit down and do the blessings of the Shema and say the Shema and meditate and get a sense of oneness and, oh, okay, this is cool. I like this. Do I hate the opposite? No, right? Let me go play pinball, right? Let me go read a nice book. Let me check Facebook. I'm fine with that, honestly. But for a tzaddik, they've got that love and hate so refined that even just, like we said, sitting down for a meal because I like the taste of it, ooh, why would you do that? You're not eating to elevate the sparks of the food? Come on, right? So this is a very rarefied personality. And as we'll see, there's different levels of it. The incomplete tzaddik, where there's just a few, and then the complete tzaddik, where there's really just one or two in a generation. That's a super rare individual.
I'm glad you said that. It makes me feel a little better because I have this feeling about the tzaddik that this person was not of this world. And I don't see that as a positive quality. Just a little rush of me. But now that you said that, including that aspect of it, the other side of hating,
Yeah.
then that keeps somebody in the world.
They're all humans, right?
Yeah.
These are all humans. We see,
But
yeah.
Now, on the other hand,
Yeah.
as a Rasha,
Yeah.
I also hate some of those things that the tzaddik might hate. So how do we distinguish that? I mean,
Yeah, that's where, absolutely, one of the reasons we're learning this, as we said, it's not purely academic. It's not like, well, why do I care about this? I'll never do this. It's because we can actually learn from that dynamic, and we can use that dynamic at our level, right? It doesn't make me a tzaddik, obviously,
right.
but if I love something that's really important, and then I hate its opposite, I understand that's a good, healthy thing. I want to be able to strengthen that within appropriate boundaries. Recognize that sometimes I may be wrong because I don't have this kind of worldview where I shouldn't be throwing that at other people. But within myself, if there's something within me that I love, that I want to encourage, it's okay to actually hate the opposite of it at my level, right? I used to lose my temper much more. I used to sometimes yell at my kids, and I'd see their faces and how hurt they were at their father yelling at them and really being angry, not just disciplining them. And I'm not saying I hate that aspect of myself. Right? I don't want that aspect to ever express. So it doesn't make me a tzaddik, obviously, to not want my kids to have an angry father. But good. That's how a tzaddik works. That's how a Rasha can also learn from that. And let me take those parts of my life that are most problematic and use that dynamic to elevate them, for sure.
So it's just at different levels.
Oh, yeah. All right, so let's pick up. We're top of page 154. מחמת גודל אהבתו לשם וקדושתו באהבה רבה בתענוגים וחיבה יתרה הנזכרים לאל. Why don't you go ahead, because?
Because of his great love, a profuse love of delights in his superior degree of affection for God and his holiness, as mentioned above in chapter 9, where the Alter Rebbe explained that love of delights is the ultimate level in the love of God. To resume, because of the tzaddik's great love for God and holiness, he utterly hates the klipa and sitra achra.
So it's a measure of the love. We can look at the degree to which they have an aversion within themselves to anything that is self-centered, and that is a litmus test of, is this love complete, or is this an incomplete tzaddik? Ki hem ze l'umat ze.
Since they, holiness and klipa, are antithetical, his love of God therefore evokes the commensurate degree of hatred for sitra achra.
Right, so it's not just that one causes the other, that if I have this great ava shebetanugim, this great love of delights, the result is, well then of course I'm going to hate the opposite, but it's also a result of, we understand the world is a complete symmetry. It's being created by the Ein Sof all the time, and it's one mirroring the other. So it's like a seesaw, right? If my end of the seesaw is up, that means there's somebody sitting on the other side. It's not a mystery. right? Maybe that's not the best metaphor, but the fact that the tzaddik does or doesn't have this complete hatred for the opposite of it is telling us that the love is also not complete, because they are actually symmetrical creations. They are two sides of the same coin that the Ein Sof is creating. כדכתיב תכלית שנאת נתים לאויבים היו לי חקרני ודע לבבי וגומר.
So it is written, I hate them with a consuming hatred, says King David of those who oppose God. They have become enemies to me. Search me, he says to God, and know my heart.
And this means?
This means, by searching me and knowing how great is the love of you born in my heart, you will know how great is my hatred toward your enemies. For as stated, love is the measure of right.
So here we have Psalms, King David, and he's giving this as a proof text that if you want to know how great my love for God is, if you want to know how great a tzaddik this person is, search my heart, both myself internally, examine myself, and also the Ein Sof, which is aware of every level of our being, and see whether I really hate what opposes it. וכפי ערך גודל אהבה לשם, כך ערך גדול השנאה לסטרא אחרא והמיאוס ברע בתכלית.
Hence, according to the abundance of love toward God, so is the extent of hatred toward the spiritual sitra achara, which nurtures the physical pleasures and the utter repugnance of the evil of physical pleasures.
Yeah, and in the note, we don't have to read it, he points out the distinction between hatred toward the sitra achra. The sitra achra is the spiritual side of reality that's not holiness. Right? We defined this in the earlier chapters. Sitra achra doesn't mean it's evil, horrible, destructive. Sitra achra just means anything that doesn't recognize its only Ein Sof. Anything that thinks it has beingness. Right? So it's this whole side of reality. As soon as you've left holiness, as soon as you've not nullified to the Ein Sof, you're sitra achra. And so that a tzaddik will hate. But then the actual physical pleasures that we're talking about, now I'm talking about, the steak that I'm just going to eat the whole thing because I love the taste. There, we're talking about a physical manifestation. There's actual repugnance. Whoa, slow down. And there's actually two practices that are illustrative of this. One which is old school and one which is more new school. And the old school one I'll share with you. The Alter Rebbe, when he first started getting students around, disciples, who came to his town, really, they were already scholars of the highest order. They were already spiritual masters of a very, very high order. They came to refine themselves as much as possible and learn with this great mystical genius. And one practice that they did in the early days was, if they felt an urge or a craving, what's called a taiva, right? A taiva is when someone made apple pie, and I just love apple pie. And immediately, oh yeah, as soon as they took out the recipe book, something's going in me, right? I'm looking forward to this apple pie. Or, the third movie of my favorite movie series is coming out. I see in 3 months it's coming out. Oh, I can't wait to see it, right? It's called a taiva. Not negative or positive. It's just a human drive. But as soon as they felt an urge or a desire for anything permitted, obviously, they were only dealing with permitted things. These are really, really refined people already from a Jewish perspective. But if someone was making a chicken soup and they just loved it, that's it, they would avoid it. And they said a full year, as soon as they felt an urge for something permitted, just for that reason, they'd avoid it. And they said that was a practice of breaking the taiva, of breaking that chain of desire, where I go through life, and okay, I created my box, I'm not going to go outside the box, I'm not going to hurt people, I'm not going to break laws, I'm going to say my prayers. But within that box, what am I thinking of next? Oh, I really want to have this. I want to do that. I want to go home and spend time with this, whatever it is. If they had the urge, simply for the reason of breaking the nefesh b'amit, then they refrained from doing it, eating it, whatever. For a year, can you imagine? These are serious people about this phenomenon that they don't want to allow nefesh b'amit to express just in the realm of the permitted, just in the realm of the okay, of the normal. They want to be masters of their own drive. And they say, I get to decide what I want. I get to decide what I want, and I get to decide which soul does the wanting. Right? Because nefesh b'amit is very good at saying, okay, you're not gonna break this rule. Okay, but well, you're keeping the rule, maybe we could do this, right? That's how it'll work. So to break it, you have to be very, very disciplined. We don't do that so much now. I would not recommend that. However, there's a practice I'll share with you quickly that's one of the exercises from later in the Tanya, where he talks about a practice of iskafia. Very, very subtle and easy, and just do it normally in life, but very powerful. And that is, when I have a plate in front of me of food that I love, specifically food, and this is like I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I can't wait, the scotch, whatever it is. Okay, I'm going to keep a little bit of Torah on my table. And like we said, when I'm reading Torah or thinking about it, that's pretty much guaranteed to be nefesh elokit, unless I'm doing it because I want a job or because I think somebody's going to give me a medal. But I don't think that's our scenario. I think for us, when we're learning Torah, that's a pretty safe bet. Hold off on the food. Give me 2 minutes, and just learn any text you want, be it Tanya, be it Torah, whatever you want, and just put pause on that desire. And during that time, when I'm telling Nefesh B'Amid, yeah, you're going to get what you want, it's going to taste good, but you're just going to wait 2 minutes, that's all. And during that time, I'm going to use that to reorient myself and do something Nefesh Elokit oriented. And you'll see when we get to it, the amount of spiritual light that is generated by that activity is just tremendous. We're taking all of our earthly core and we're elevating it tremendously, and we're causing unifications, and we're causing other dynamics above that are really incalculable.
Doesn't that require a special level of self-discipline?
No, I don't think so. What, 2 minutes? You can't wait 2 minutes?
That's why he carries his book.
That's right. Once you try it, you see you got to do it, and you have to decide to do it. But this is a pretty easy thing to do. I mean, if I sat down to a meal, and then my son was busy and didn't come to the table, I'd wait 2 minutes for my son to get there to start eating, right? Out of politeness. So let me just also do that for my divine soul. I have the capacity to wait. It's just making the choice.
Easy for you.
Okay, give it a try and see how it works.
Only mundane things, not studying Torah or tzedakah or stuff like that, correct?
What do you mean?
Well, if you get an urge to give tzedakah, for example.
Right. No, correct.
You don't want to pause on that.
No, just the opposite. Yeah, I think I mentioned in the examples, I might have confused things, but with divine soul-oriented things, you actually want to have zerezut. You want to rush to it. You want to have alacrity. So there, it's the opposite. If I wake up and I say, I said I'd say the Shema this morning, but first let me check this, do that. Just the opposite. There, you want to say, I know who's making that suggestion. First thing I do is the mitzvah. Yeah.
I have a clarification on that.
Yeah.
In terms of like the meditation world,
Yeah.
I feel like it's really common with like the Sitra Achar to like want to do something that looks divine on the surface, but to do it for a reason of getting rid of things we think are negative, like getting rid of our anxiety or relaxing or feeling better or being more productive at work. Would that be an example of like the animal part or the divine, the animal soul disguising itself in divinity, like using meditation as a means of being more productive rather than understanding that all is Ein Sof, all is one?
Yeah, I think it gets more and more subtle, right? As we get to more and more higher order questions, it gets more and more subtle. So it could be either, right? If I say, look, I want to meditate every morning, I want to learn this stuff so that I'm more productive, so that I get a better job, so that I earn more money, and so that people think I'm better, and I'll be a leader, and I'm going to get this right? Then yeah, now Nefesh B'Amid's jumped in, and my Nefesh B'Amid is meditating, right? Nefesh B'Amid is happy to meditate as long as it's serving me, right? However, if I say, you know what, I see that I could be better in life for the people around me, so I'm going to meditate every morning so that I'm more calm and that people can rely on me. Isn't that a great thing? And that I'm going to, figure out how people can learn more around me. Great. Let me improve myself for the sake of others, right? So it never stops. At every level, you have to keep asking the same question. And at every level, you can come back and Nefesh B'Amid can jump in and turn it this way.
So it's really about your intention.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question then. I'm having trouble understanding then how a learned Orthodox person cannot accept a Reformed Jew and can speak out to say that. Could you kind of put that in some kind of that's what comes to my mind when all of this you're talking about.
Yeah.
In a way I first understood because they're hating, the other side and so forth in their mind.
Uh-huh.
But if you speak out against it, which happens quite often, isn't that the opposite of that? Do you understand what I'm saying now?
Yeah, it's a very complicated statement.
It is. It's
To
a
me,
complicated thought too.
yeah, to me, on the one hand, I think it's okay for there to be expressions of Judaism that have values and morals, right? So at Reform Judaism, we believe in gay marriage. Doesn't mean I think that someone who doesn't share my view is a terrible, mean, cruel person and trying to hurt me, right? But I should be able to have my beliefs, right? Just on the same length, someone who's a true, traditional Orthodox Jew believes there's a certain definition of what Judaism is, and some things are outside of that. And so it's fine for them to have that value and that belief. I don't see that as being negative. Judaism has always had many, many expressions that seem to contradict each other. Welcome to Judaism. When it comes to people that are expressing in inappropriate ways, now you're not talking about an Orthodox person anymore, right?
That's the answer.
So if somebody's yelling at or spitting or calling names or whistling or expressing anger, as we said, okay, it's Russia like me. It's not an Orthodox person, and it's not my place to judge them. I've got my flaws, they have their flaws. I don't know why they're doing this obviously not productive behavior, right? But they're not Orthodox, they're Russia, so am I. So let them work on their stuff with their mentor, I'll work on my stuff with my mentor, and we'll try and improve things that way.
Thank you.
Hands, right?
A little different.
It's good conversations. Where are we? I forgot where we were.
And then,
Oh, 4. כי המיאוס הוא הפך אהבה ממש כמו השנאה. For repugnance.
Okay, for repugnance is as much the exact opposite of love as it is hatred. In any event, we have established that the tzaddik utter despisal of evil is projected on his loving God to the greatest degree. He is therefore called a complete tzaddik, since the quality by virtue of which he is termed a tzaddik, his love of God, is on the highest and most complete level. He is called a tzaddik who knows only good. He possesses only good, having transformed all the evil within him to good. Hence, the incomplete tzaddik, whose love of delights is imperfect, must also be lacking in his hatred and evil. This, in turn, indicates that he retains some vestige of evil unfelt. He is therefore called a tzaddik who knows evil.
Right, so just to point out, the two terms have different dynamics. Complete and incomplete tzaddik means is their love of God complete or incomplete, and therefore also their hatred. And a tzaddik who knows good, a tzaddik who knows evil, now we see that's about the degree to which the actual drive of the animal soul has been converted to good. Right? So not about the quality of love, but about the degree of conversion of the animal soul's drive. It's a detail, but it's nice to see there's meaning.
So, I mean, I'm getting the feeling that a complete tzaddik, it's black and white without the gray.
It's like the black and white is super, super bright. I don't know,
Okay.
like a tzaddik, every
But
tzaddik is black and white, right? No,
Right.
there's no tzaddik.
But there's no gray area. I mean, for them, it's, it either is or it isn't.
Right, yeah.
Or for an incomplete tzaddik, or for us, there's all these gray areas where we could.
No,
No?
I don't think there's any gray for incomplete tzaddik, right? It's just an incomplete tzaddik also has the inner experience of absolutely no counterproductive urges, and there's no gray area there inside for them. There's no point where they say, well, maybe I should do this. No, I probably shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't occur to them. So really, every tzaddik it's pretty clear. This is just another dynamic where you're talking about completely converting the whole thing.
Okay.
So I guess there's no gray in that there's no leftover, if that's what you mean,
Right.
But in their consciousness, there's nothing gray. וצדיק שאינו גמור הוא שאינו שונא הסטרא אחרא בתכלית השנאה.
The incomplete tzaddik is he who does not hate the sitra akara, the spiritual kelpog, with an absolute hatred. Therefore, he also does not find evil. physical desires and pleasures absolutely begrudged.
Right? ולכן אינו מואה, the mems and the samachs, moem, thank you, moes, גם כן bara בתכלית. Right? So at that point, if the incomplete tzaddik doesn't have an absolute repugnance towards evil, if it's not just, why, I hate the idea of that, that's the only way we can tell that this isn't a complete tzaddik, it's an incomplete tzaddik. Because it would never occur to them to do the thing. They have no counterproductive desires. They certainly wouldn't think, speak, or act in ways that are counterproductive. But just so that it's not a pool of vomit, as we keep saying, right? They don't walk by and go, oh, why would I do that? Oh, that's horrible, right? It just wouldn't occur to them. So that's the only way you can tell the difference. On the inside and the outside, they're the same. וכל שאין השנאה והמיאוס, no, we did that.
Totally lost, she did those.
No.
She did.
וכל שאין השנאה והמיאוס בתכלית על כרחך, נשאר איזה שמץ אהבה ותענוג לשם.
I think we're at, as long as his hatred and
Yeah.
influence,
Yeah.
but evil are not absolute. Perforce, he must have retained some vintage of love and pleasure toward it.
So there's a little subconscious something left in there, right? There's some fumes in the tank. ולא הוסרו הבגדים הצועים לגמרי מכל וכל.
The filthy garments in which the animal soul have been clothed, meaning, as explained above, the evil inclination and the lusting after worldly pleasures have obviously not been completely shed from it.
So if you remember, there was, in chapter 9, there was the desires of the animal soul. And that doesn't mean a conscious thought, right? I could be the kind of person that desires, you name it, right? I love gossiping. That's who I am. Now, I may be reading a book. I'm not thinking about gossiping. It's not occurring to me to gossip. There's no conscious thought of gossiping. But I'm the kind of person that loves gossiping, right? That's still there. That's my nature, right? So the drive can be there without expressing his thought. And then there's also the attachment of the drive. What is it that I like to do? I like to gossip. That's a garment that's on that my animal soul is wearing, even if it's not expressing it. So don't be confused by the word garment. Here, garment doesn't talk about thought, speech, and action. He's talking about a spiritual garment of the animal soul that we talked about in chapter 9.
Is that the filthy, what they
Yeah,
mentioned here,
the
the filthy garment?
Counterproductive, shall we say, right? So those filthy or counterproductive garments, it doesn't mean that they're expressing his thought. I could just be the kind of person that likes to gossip. So if I want to become a complete tzaddik, right, good luck, but if I do, now I've got to retrain the drive of the animal soul to not be focused on gossip. Doesn't mean I'm actually thinking about it, but that's not a drive that I would have if I can strip it away by exercise, if I can continually find a way to reorient it, that eventually I take off the garment and I just have the neutral drive, which is a great thing. The drive of the animal soul is powerful. It's what we need to accomplish anything, right? So here he's talking about, have I completely stripped away the drive, the focus of the drive of the animal soul, so that I have just the energy left to follow the compass bearing of the divine soul. And if I don't completely hate the opposite of a divine soul, it means there's just a subtle trace of that garment left, and there's a subtle trace of that energy and direction left in the animal soul. As we'll see, it can't be expressed in thought, speech, and action. But the garments still need to be scrubbed even more.
Your personality have any value in developing these strengths?
Yeah, that's the entire value of personality. That's what's called avodah, work, avoida. That from day to day, from week to week, and year to year, we want to refine ourselves. We want to find the aspects of ourselves that are counterproductive and convert them to be productive, and actually elevate our personality, right?
So you're changing your personality if your personality has negatives.
Very much, yeah. That's what it's about. אלא שהוא בטל במיעוטו. Oh, sorry. Did we do ולכן?
No.
ולכן לא נהפך לטוב ממש, מאחר שיש לו איזה אחיזה עדיין בבגדים הצועים.
Therefore, too,
the evil of the animal soul has not actually been converted to good, since it still has some hold on the filthy garments. That is, the desires for pleasure in which the animal soul had previously clothed and expressed itself.
Right, so maybe there's less of it there, but if I don't really hate the opposite of it, if I don't really hate gossip, then I haven't really started to love using speech productively and recognizing the mystical pathway towards mastery that speech is in Judaism. It's our martial arts, right? We walk around all day just kind of chatting and this and that and talk about somebody and you know, maybe this wasn't true, sort of, but whatever, right? In Judaism, speech is like our martial arts, where you get the belts and you elevate and you pathways to mastery. Speech is that. So if I really, really take it seriously, and I love using speech to elevate the world around me and myself, then I'm going to hate gossip. I just am. Like, it's not just that I'm going to stop myself. It's not just that it won't occur to me. I hate that I would even have any desire towards it at all, right? So at that deep level, an incomplete tzaddik doesn't hate gossip in this case the way that a complete tzaddik does, which now all the energy of the animal soul, the garments have been stripped of it, and now it's free to focus completely on the compass bearing of the animal soul without any subconscious agenda of its own, right? All this, I keep saying, all this is outside of the arena of ever expressing in thought, speech, and action. Both these personalities would never consciously think about gossiping and say, oh boy, I'd love to tell this story. Imagine telling, how am I going to tell it? And look at the look on their face and when they fight, right? They would never do that. But just on the level of the insides of the soul, there's a question of how complete is that work? Shehu batel b'miut uchla chashiv.
Except that this vestige of evil is imperceptible and cannot express itself in evil desires, because the evil is nullified in the good by reason of its minuteness and is accounted as nothing. That is, the overwhelming preponderance of good prevents the evil from being sensed and from finding expression.
So I'm gonna summarize the next little bit, and that is, now we start to get into categories of the incomplete Rasha, and that those garments left on the soul on the animal soul of the Rasha, they're nullified to begin with, right? So they can't express themselves because the divine soul is so powerful on the right side of the heart, and the love flows into the left side of the heart. So even if there's a little bit of energy left there, it's just imperceptible. And the model we use is actually from food, which is if I have a pot of chicken soup and I'm pouring my milk into my coffee and splash, a drop flies through the air, it lands plink into the soup. You think, oh no, now the soup's not kosher. No. There's so much chicken soup in there, it's a huge pot. This one drop of milk is actually nullified in the soup, right? If it's less than 1/60th, or it's 1/60th or less, I don't remember which one, I'm not sure. But if it's below 1/60th, it's nullified, it's called insignificant, and it's like it's not there. And the soup is just as kosher. There's no difference in the halachic kashrut of that soup, as long as it's less than 1/60th, right? And another measure is whether you can taste it or not, right? If you find someone who wasn't bound by halakha who could taste it, and they say, no taste of milk, again, it's kosher.
Who decided that ratio?
That's from the Talmud. That's halakha, right? That's a whole other field of study, right? Someone's 160, someone's 1 in 100. There's all kinds of rules around it. Yeah, but you didn't want to waste food just because not everybody had these beautiful kitchens we have now in Jewish history, and you can imagine cooking and you got pots on top of each other, and so you had to figure out a way to still be able to eat and live. So that's what's happening spiritually. There's still some animal drive left, but it's nullified. If it's less than 1 in 60, it's nullified. And he goes on to say, let's read it. I changed my mind. Let's read it. I know. V'lachen nikra tzadik v'ra kfuf uvatel lo. Indeed,
therefore he is called tzaddik,
v'ra lo.
lo, which means not only a tzaddik who knows, retains evil, but also a tzaddik whose evil is that is subjugated and surrendered to him, to the good within him. Such a tzaddik is identified with the good since he is overwhelmingly good.
So now we see another angle on tzaddik v'ralo. It's not just a tzaddik and bad things happen to them because they're not complete, so the world is still kind of teaching them. And it's not tzaddik v'ralo, a tzaddik and there's some evil kind of left subconsciously. It's actually tzaddik v'ralo. It's a tzaddik for whom that little tiny bit of self-centeredness energy is actually completely under his command or her command, right? Yes, they do have a certain self-centered drive, but it's completely under their jurisdiction. They decide what they want and don't want. That trace amount of self-centered drive is theirs. They possess it, they own it, they're mastered it. It's still there, but it belongs to them. So we see a kind of a deeper meaning on the title, tzaddik v'ralo.
And I just wanted to ask something. What would a tzaddik do in this situation if they ate with the wrong, let's see, silverware? If they used, by mistake, dairy silverware to eat meat? It used to be, I've always heard that you just bury the silverware in the ground for a day and then it's kosher again. What would a tzaddik do about that?
He goes out in the backyard and buries himself for a week.
Look, there's many ways to approach that, right? I mean, on the one hand, someone for whom this is very important is going to have an abundance of caution and will be very, very careful. But if you don't remember in the news, there was one meat vendor for a whole area. It turned out that they were selling not kosher meat to camps and to this and to that. And so, if say there was a tzaddik in that community and they were just eating kosher meat like everybody else, if it's completely in error, that's what tshuva is for, right? That's what repentance is for. I'm not sure anyone can help sinning in error and then having to do tshuva. I'm not sure that would say that and now nobody in that area could have been a tzaddik. Do you know what I mean? But when it comes about the laws of food, actually, it's not always as hard as you think. If, for instance, a fork, if I used it to eat, I touched cold cuts with it or something, it doesn't necessarily make the fork non-kosher. If there wasn't heat involved, it hasn't transferred. So then you just rinse the fork off, put it back in your drawer, and you're done. If there was heat involved, like if I stuck it into a steaming hot steak and it was a dairy fork, oops. Now you take it and you can re-kosher it, and the same way that the flavor went in, the flavor comes out. So in this case, you would have to boil it. You make a pot of boiling water, you dip it in, and now it's kosher again, and the heat that put the flavor in, so to speak, takes it out. With knives, yeah, you've heard that tradition that if you have a knife with a wooden handle and you can't re-kosher it by dipping, you can take the knife and you stick it into the ground a certain number of times, and that koshers it. So there's ways of dealing with it, but obviously, like we said, a tzaddik is living in the world, and if there's something completely out of their control, that's what tshuva is for. ולכן נקרא צדיק שאינו גמור. ועל כן גם אהבתו לשם אינה בתכלית.
3/4, then the fact that he retains some evil indicates that his love of God is also not complete. For complete love of God would have converted all the evil within him to good.
ולכן נקרא צדיק שאינו גמור. Then he's called an incomplete tzaddik. Right? So someone who converts all of their self-centered drive to a nefesh elokit centered drive, that person who's completely converted it, that's someone who is a tzaddik v'tovlo. Someone who's built and created a complete love of God, that's a complete tzaddik. והנה מדרגה זו מתחלקת לרבבות מדרגות בעניין בחינת מיעוט הרע הנשאר מאחת מארבע יסודות הרעים.
Now this level, that of the incomplete tzaddik who knows evil, is subdivided into myriads of levels consisting of various degrees in the quality of the minute remaining evil deriving from any one of the 4 evil elements of which the animal soul is composed.
All right, so we can skip this section here. He points out that sometimes the remaining energy in nefesh b'mit expresses in just one of the 4 elements. So water, fire, earth, and air. And then later on he says, another way of looking at it is in the degree to which it's nullified, right? If you're an incomplete tzaddik, you know it's less than 160, but it might be 1 in 100, it might be 1 in 1,000, it might be 1 in a million, and there's many, many levels of incomplete tzaddikim. And he goes on to say, no, that's from a different section, sorry. Vinyan bitul b'miuto. This subdivision.
The subdivision also takes into account the degree to which the remaining evil is nullified in the good because of its minuteness.
ב-60 על דרך משל, או ב-1000, רבבה, וכיוצא על דרך משל.
Whether in 60 times as much good, for example, or in 1,000, or 10,000, and so on.
So really, once you get into incomplete tzaddik, they're still working and refining. I mean, this person is like another species compared to me, but they have to live a life and learn and grow. And for them, there's 1 in 10,000 left in there. Can I get it to 1 in a million? Can I still work on myself? And for them, it's just as much work as for me to get the basics right. והן הם בחינות צדיקים הרבים שבכל הדורות.
These various sub-levels in the ranks of incomplete tzaddikim are the levels of the numerous tzaddikim found in all generations, all of whom belong to the category of the incomplete tzaddik.
And how many? Kadita בגמרא דתמנסר אלפי צדיקי קמא הקדוש ברוך הוא.
As we find in the Gemara, 18,000 tzaddikim stand before the Holy One, blessed be He.
So there's your number from the Gemara. How many incomplete tzaddikim are there in history? 18,000. So do the math. It's not a lot for every generation. Right? It's a very, very small community. We shouldn't assume we can get the level of a tzaddik. But that's the incomplete tzaddikim. Amalat tzaddik gamur. הוא שמע רבי שמעון בן יוחאי ראיתי בני אל עלייה והם מועטים כולו.
But concerning the rank of the complete tzaddik, Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's statement applies. I have seen superior men named Aliyah, but they are but few.
Okay. And if you're wondering, I just noticed it's 1 in 60 is nullified, right? So it's actually that's the level at which it starts being nullified. I just see in the note here. But concerning the complete tzaddik, now we're looking at Shimon bar Yochai or ben Yochai, and he says, I've seen, he used this term b'nei aliyah, and they're but few. So now we have a new term added to the complete tzaddik, and that's b'nei aliyah, which means children of ascent, or sons of ascent, sons of elevation. And they are but few. We'll get to that in a moment. שלכן נקראים בני עלייה שמהפכין הרע ומעלים אותו לקדושה.
The reason that the complete tzaddikim are called b'nei aliyah, men of ascent, is that they convert evil and make it ascend to holiness.
So there's something very different happening here. And Shimon bar Yochai, he's considered like one of the greatest tzaddikim of all time. So we'll get to a story about him. But here, when you're talking about a complete tzaddik, their work and their advantage is not just that they stopped the klipa from expressing, and nefesh from expressing, not even that they banished it from their heart, but they actually, as we said, they got to 100% total, and now they converted it, and it became a second nefesh elokit. So what they did is they took their whole nefesh b'amit, their whole animal soul, and everything connected to it, and they actually elevated it to become something that's part of holiness. That's why we call them b'nei aliyah, right? In this case, men of aliyah, because they actually can elevate self-centeredness to become holiness. They can convert it entirely. And also, by the way, their environment around them. Many, many stories of people that have had just one short conversation with a tzaddik of this stature, and suddenly their whole direction has changed, right? Or the ability to, by spilling a bowl of soup, to change something happening over, in the capital of Russia and save many Jews. There's something about this kind of tzaddik that can actually convert their whole personality and their whole environment and elevate the physical or the self-centered to become holiness. It's a whole different field of work. And to understand this story, I want to learn a little about Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Right? He was a 2nd century Tanaic sage after the destruction of the Second Temple. and student of Rabbi Akiva, and said to be the author of the Zohar, right? Which certainly this tradition accepts wholeheartedly. And the famous story was that he was very critical of the Roman government in sort of the Talmudic conversations. And when the Roman government heard about that, they sentenced him to death. And so he hid for 12 years in a cave, came out, and for various reasons went back in for another year, and became really one of the greatest sages and mystics and Kabbalists of all time. His tomb is in Meron. On Lag BaOmer, if you've seen the crazy pictures of the tens of thousands of people that come there. So he is said to be the author of the Zohar. And let's kind of talk about that, right? Because you may say, well, what about Moshe de Leon, who is like 13th century? Wasn't he the one that wrote the Zohar? Isn't that what? Exactly. So I don't mind touching on this. If this were an academic class, certainly it'd be fair to say academics have looked at the Zohar and with literary criticism feel like it does fit into the time period of Moshe ben Shem Tov, Moshe de Leon. And there's an argument to be had there that, literally speaking, academia sees it as something written by Moshe ben Shem Tov.
Did any of these rabbis ever attain the status of a tzaddik?
Sure, yeah. But let's keep on this, though. However, when it comes to learning Kabbalah, I think if we want to actually learn a field of study, it's good to take on the assumptions of that field of study. And this isn't an academic class. So I'm not going to argue yes or no about the academic findings of critics that are working with literary criticism. But another piece is, when it comes to Kabbalah, am I over time? No? Okay.
No.
Go. Okay. No worries. When it comes to a question of who wrote something, the who is much more complex in Kabbalah than it is in Western literature, right? What is someone's identity? And we see, first of all, that a general soul is composed of many other souls. We've looked at that. And Kabbalists see that very, very literally. And if you include some of the very complex information about reincarnation that the Arizal writes about in Sefer HaGilgulim, the book of reincarnations, and Shar HaGilgulim, gates of reincarnations, we see that one general soul can have many branches that reach out and join other souls or different parts of themselves that are reincarnated. And the idea that a person could live in one time and still be active in another time is pretty common, right? As well, who a person is more a function of their teaching and their mitzvahs than it is their physical body. So from this perspective, it's not so hard to see that it's not impossible for someone to live in the 2nd century and also be, quote unquote, writing the Zohar in the 13th century. These things can happen. And if you look at this tradition, it was quite common for Rebbes of a previous generation to show up as a vision or as a dream and teach some Hasidus to the Rebbe of a future generation. And they talked about it, they were passing each other messages. Oh, this person was learning with me the other night, he says hello, like literally. It was very, very common. They'd say, this person came to me and taught me this Hasidus, and they'd share it over. So the idea that a great tzaddik could still be teaching Kabbalah or Hasidus or something after their death is really not far-fetched. It's really understood. So I'll just put that out there, that although academia certainly says, well, it's attributed to Shimon Bar Yochai, but we look, it was published by Moshe de Leon, and we look at the way it's structured, it seems to be literature from that period. How could it really be? Kabbalah, it's a much more complex way of seeing it. And let me finish with this. Moshe ben Shem Tov was a tzaddik and a Kabbalist, right? And so we very flippantly say, well, he just attributed it to the Rashbi.
Well, there was
This
a
is-
common technique then.
This is what we say.
Gave it authority.
This is what we say, right? That I, as a tzaddik and Kabbalist, I might write something and say, people are going to take it more serious if I say someone else wrote it. But that's actually lying, right? I mean, what we don't realize is somebody that dedicated their whole life to refining themselves and not even thinking, let alone speaking or acting, anything that even touches the borders of improper behavior, and then refining themselves even more so that it's flushed out and would never occur to them, and even more so that it's revolting to them. The idea that they would just say, oh, by the way, I found this book, it was somebody else wrote it, and they would just lie, and that the major work of their whole life would just be a lie. I don't think we realize what we're saying. That's contrary to the whole personality that we're looking at.
Couldn't a person like that who spent his life in the depths of these ideas hallucinate to the point where he sees somebody that was 100 or 1,000 years before?
Obviously, we have to be careful, right? Because also there's this thing happens in mental disorders. So yes, right. We have to make sure we're talking about a serious person who lives a normal life, who is functioning with a family and kids, and can have a social conversation with. This has to be a mentally stable person. Yeah.
There might have been a danger factor involved too, because the church did wipe out whole towns of people who were mystics.
Uh-huh.
So, in attributing it to somebody else might have been just
Yeah.
a protective
Look, I recognize that there's great merit to the academic argument. I'm not here to discount it, but that's not my focus of study. I want to point out also the merits of the mystical side, where it's not impossible that Moshe ben Shem Tov actually did inherit a tradition that then was expressed through him that was truly connected and was the result of the Rashbi. And that's what every Kabbalist believes, right? So quickly we'll get through this story.
His wife said he wrote it. I swear to God, somebody went and asked her. Yeah. But he compiled all the documents.
Well,
he almost redacted.
No one questions that he's the first person to write it on paper and publish it.
Yeah.
But who actually, somebody could tell me poetry and recite the poetry from an oral tradition, and then I could sail across the sea and write it down, and I could say, I wrote this. Yeah, I wrote it on paper, but I didn't write it, right?
Right.
If I traveled to North America and heard the poetry of some great Native American poet when they didn't have a written tradition, and I translated it to English and said, this is my poetry, I'm lying, right? So the person who physically wrote it down, I saw them write it down, they wrote it down. That doesn't mean that it was theirs.
Well, Well, that's why he doesn't say it was his.
Correct, yeah. Okay. Kirita bazohar בהקדמה שכאשר רצה רבי חייא לעלות להיכל רבי שמעון בן יוחאי, שמע קרא נפיק ואמר.
It is similarly written in the introduction to the Zohar that when Rabbi Chia wished to ascend to the Eichel heavenly shrine of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, he heard a voice come out and say,
מה מנחון די חשוכה מהפכן לנהורה ותאמין מרירו למתיקה עד ליתון הכה וכו'.
Whichever of you before coming here have converted the darkness of the world to light, holiness, and have transformed the bitter taste of their animal soul and evil inclinations to sweetness or holiness, only these may enter.
Right, so we'll finish with this. This is Rabbi Chia, right? Also a tzaddik, and he actually wanted to ascend to the Heichal, the dwelling place in heaven of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. And when he wanted to come in, he heard a voice say, "Whoa, what level are you? Right? Have you converted bitterness to sweetness? Have you elevated the actual self-centered physical nature of the world?" And it wasn't out of a sense of like, "Whoa, nobody comes in here except me. If you're not on my level, I'm not going to let you in." It's that physical distance in heaven. There's no physicality. There's no space. So it's only measured by your spiritual level. That's what a heaven is. That's what a heichal is purely a spiritual level, right? You turn the frequency up higher and higher. You're still in the same physical place, right? Heaven is not a physical place. So now we're learning about the level of the complete tzaddik from the perspective of when you're in heaven, all that matters is your spiritual level. That's where you are. And he's not saying, I won't let you in. He's saying, yeah, I know you'd like to come here, but you still have some tiny self-centered drive left. You haven't completely converted it, so that means you're not going to be able to get here. Right?
How do they determine that there's some negative that's still hanging around?
Well, they don't. That's the point. They actually don't know, right? By looking inside, they wouldn't know. That's why that oath at the beginning, assume I'm still a Russia, or like I'm still as a Russia, is very important. Because the difference between an incomplete tzaddik and a tzaddik, they may not themselves know what level they're at. And that's why at the beginning, Rabbah said, for instance, I'm a Bainani, which we'll learn about in 2 chapters. Good stuff. If you have questions, stick around.
Is David considered a tzaddik?
For sure, yeah.
Really?
And not just a tzaddik, but the greatest Baal Tshuva, the greatest
Yeah.
repentant.
Oh, but not a tzaddik.
A tzaddik also,
Really?
for sure, yeah.
When did he follow Tshuva?
When he did all the stuff with Bathsheba, right? I mean, it wasn't, if you look at how it's